This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
We will call to order the Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee meeting of June 8th, 2021, beginning at 7:01 p.m. Present are committee members Broussard, Williamson, and Limpert, all of Council President Jones, the Mayor, Law Director Garreau, and many guests. And I apologize if I've omitted anybody. We'll pick you up near the end. So this evening we've got a few items that we're going to discuss. And somebody, if somebody is not muted, can you please do so? All right, thank you. So we're obviously going to be talking about a recent rash of dog incidents, but before we get to those, we do have a few liquor permits that we have to consider this evening, so we'll start with those. The first being a transfer of liquor permit number 1124-012-0025, which is CEC Entertainment Incorporated, doing business as Chuck E. Cheese's at 26104 Great Northern Shopping Center, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. And that will transfer to CEC Entertainment LLC, DBA Chuck E. Cheese's, 26104 Great Northern Shop Center, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. There are no objections by the police department. At this time, I'll open it up to committee. Any questions or concerns? Seeing and hearing none, I'll move to not object to all of council regarding liquor permit number 1124-012-0025. Ask for a second.
Second.
That'll be seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That'll pass 3-0. Moving on to our second. This is liquor permit number 0790591. This is a transfer from Suet Chun Shek, which is DBA Fusing Restaurant, located at 25102 Brook Park Road, Suite 130, North Olmsted, Ohio, 44070. This would transfer to Lee's Seafood Boil, North Olmsted, LLC, DBA Lee's Seafood Broil, located at 23462 Lorraine Road, North Olmsted, Ohio, 44070. Also, no objection from the police department on this one. Any questions or comments from committee? Seeing or hearing none, I'll go ahead and move to not object to full council. Liquor permit number 0790591, and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That'll also pass 3-0. And last is a new liquor permit application, number 6315483. This would be issued to Nailsaholic LLC, DBA Nailsaholic, at 5082 Great Northern Plaza South, North Olmsted, Ohio 44070. No concerns from the police department on this one as well. Committee, any questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, I'll make a motion to not object to full council and ask for a second.
Second.
Ms. Broussard, I did have a question.
Oh, okay. I apologize, Mr. Limpert. Go ahead.
So is this a nail salon looking for a liquor permit?
It appears to be the case. It would not be, as I understand it, it would not be the first in the city to do this, although I don't get my nails done.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Is that still a second by Councilwoman Williamson?
Yes.
Okay. Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That'll pass 3-0. that will conclude the liquor permit portion of this evening. So I guess now we'll move on to the main order of business, which is dog bites and dog attacks within the city of North Olmsted. So I just kind of want to lay some ground rules here. For those of you who are tuning into our committee meeting process for the first time, I'll typically have some comments of my own. We'll open it up to committee, then we'll open it up to the rest of city council. And then it's up to the discretion of the chair, i.e. me, whether or not we open it up to guests as well. All right. So we'll see how that goes. But I just want to start by just asking to the administration, no one in particular, does the city know with certainty where these dogs are today, meaning the dogs that were involved in the Clegg Road biting incidents?
Mr. Chairman,
Mayor Kennedy?
we do not know with certainty where they are. We know they're not in the city. But what I want to do is I'll start it out, Mr. Chairman, if you want, and I'm going to kind of go through the timeline of everything and try to go through it quickly. So if you guys have any questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, but you might expect some interjection on my part at some point, but please feel free.
Okay, well, I'll start it out. So I just want to say I'm going to refrain from commenting on the case as if there's I'll be the hearing officer if the case is appealed. But on May 13th, Officer Scullin and Officer Franz responded to 23508 Clifford for a dog attack. Mrs. Ramos was looking for her dogs and found them on Marion. Dog owner claimed they were insured and the dogs had all their shots. The dogs at this point were in Mrs. Ramos's car. Officer responded to 23492 Marion to complete the dog bite reports for the victims. Officer Scullin reported dog bites to the county. Quarantine was required by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. And also on May 13th, Mrs. Ramos was told to bring the paperwork from the vet up to the police station on May 17th. Also advised the paperwork is required by law. And at that time, she could fill out a statement. May 17th, Mrs. Ramos was told to respond back to the police department. Officer called several times, left voicemails. Mrs. Ramos was unresponsive. May 19th, officer went to Mrs. Ramos' residence, but no one would come to the door. The officer observed several dogs in the front window. A note was left to contact him. May 20th, animal control officer left notification at 2811 Clegg Road. No response from Mrs. Ramos. May 20th, Mrs. Ramos left a message with Officer Scullin that she'd be out of town until May 22nd. May 23rd, Mrs. Ramos came to the police department. She was advised the report was sent to the city prosecutor for a ruling because she was uncooperative and failed to provide paperwork. She was advised that the Cuyahoga County Board of Health has also been trying to contact her and needed to see the dogs on May 24th. On May 24th, Cuyahoga County Board of Health reported the inspection was complete with Mrs. Ramos. Mrs. Ramos reported to the Cuyahoga County Board of Health for inspection. According to the reports, Mrs. Ramos was not compliant with the county's vaccination requirements and registration as of May 24th, 2021. Cuyahoga County Board of Health followed up with the victims. May 24th, Officer Coomer was bit while delivering the letter to set up a hearing. May 24th to June 3rd, Mrs. Ramos did not contact the animal control officer or safety department to set up the hearing. June 3rd, Mrs. Ramos responded to City Hall with an application to register her dogs. Animal control officer served Mrs. Ramos with the determination hearing notice at City Hall when Mrs. Ramos dropped off the registration with the animal control officer. June 4th, animal control officer delivered a letter to Mrs. Ramos stating that the city's registration was incomplete, no insurance, containment, signage, or permit fees. No response at the door. Notice was left at the door. Determination hearing was June 7th at 1 o'clock. Order from the hearing officer Copford to voluntarily surrender the dogs to the animal control officer, Officer Justice, and Officer Ventris. Mrs. Ramos was not at home and no evidence of the dogs at the house. The hearing order was left at the door and also mailed June 8th. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I think what is first and foremost on my mind is, and correct me if I have the dates correct, but you indicated that the first dog bite incident occurred on May 13th. And is that right? Okay. And at that time, you also indicated during your summary just now that it was the determination of the Cuyahoga County that the dogs be kenneled. Do I have that accurate?
Yeah, they can be quarantined or kenneled at the home. That per our ordinances and also the County Board of Health.
Okay, all right. So again, first and foremost on my mind is who made the decision to not kennel the dogs versus taking the word of the homeowner following a vicious attack on a neighbor. Who made that decision, and why was that decision made?
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that question. I mean, that's part of our ordinances. That's what, you know, again, it's my job as the executive to carry out the law, and the legislative branch gives me the laws to which I carry out. So that's in our ordinances. So that was our decision.
But I perfectly understand that. I'm 12 and a half years on council now. So my question was, the ordinance allows for self-quarantining or having the dogs removed and kenneled until a determination can be had. So my pointed question is, why were they not ordered to be kenneled and removed from the residence versus self-quarantine?
I'll let the animal control officer answer that question if.
Yeah, am I on? Does everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you state your name for the record, sir?
Yes, I'm Animal Control Officer Atkins, North Olmsted and Bay Village PD.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Before we begin, I just want to make sure that I understand the relationship between your services and the city. So I'll just kind of run through how I understand them, and if there's any corrections, please feel free to do that
No
following
problem.
my run through. So you are not a member of the North Olmsted Police Department. You technically work for the city of Bay Village, where your salary and benefits are earned. And then we have a shared agreement with the city of Bay Village where we reimburse the city of Bay Village for any services that you render within the city of North Olmsted. And currently, based on our city flow chart, you technically report to our director of public service. So in this case, our director of public service is currently temporarily Mayor Kennedy, since we don't have a director of public service. So does all that sound accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. All right, so back to the question on a lot of people's minds is, who made the decision? What was the rationale? And why was the decision made to self-quarantine versus removing them from the residence following this first attack?
On May 13th, I was in Bay Village, assigned there, and I heard the call come over of 5 pit bulls at large. And I realized what that entails. It's a very hard thing. It's dangerous. I left Bay Village and responded to the address that was over the radio. And upon arrival, Officer Scullin was talking to witnesses, and I asked him, "Are the dogs still out?" And he stated that, yeah, they went through the yard, and Officer Franz is en route. That's when I proceeded to the north street of where they were at. And when I arrived, there was 4 dogs in a car, and there was the owner with a female pit bull on a leash. and Officer Franz was there, and I just stated, get the dog in the car right now because they're aggressive. And she agreed and put them all in the car. And basically, from that point, to keep them out of the public for public safety, that is my main concern. So another incident doesn't occur. I said, okay, they're confined and dogs will listen to their owner. You could do whatever you want, but the dogs are going to listen to the owner. At that point in time, the safety for the city was keep them confined immediately. Then I've said, I thought to myself, we don't have room for 5 pit bulls in our kennel. And there is a thing that's very common that is a home quarantine because the dogs feel safe at home. They listen to whoever their family members are. As long as you can keep them contained, you contain them. At that point in time, I had no contacts with any shelters or boarding facilities. Most of them are full, and most of them will not accept aggressive animals because they don't want them to attack their staff. So it's a liability issue. So after all that, as a split decision, I said, take them home. We'll home quarantine them, but they cannot be out in public. They can't be walked. They have to stay on the premises. And that's where Officer Scullin and Franz continue with their taking reports on the female that was injured and her neighbor that beat one of the dogs with a stick, and he ended up getting bit too. And that's where that ended as far as I was involved.
Okay, thank you. I want to back up a little bit. You made the comment that self-quarantining is a common event or a common option. I would argue that vicious dog attacks on humans are not a common event in our city or any city, and so I would argue that our common procedures and things that we hold true in a normal event, those shouldn't be our first priority or our first alternative. So, I'll also argue that we basically put them back in the home that they escaped from. So, were there any assurances given to you or any of the responding police that measures would be taken to correct the escape that occurred, correct it from happening again?
Yes, she stated that she fixed the hole in her fence, and that was that. And I'm sorry, let me go back to, it's not a personal quarantine or whatever you stated. It's called a home quarantine. But yeah, she assured that she fixed the small hole that they escaped from. But I also advised her she had to take each dog out when they wanted to go do their thing on a leash, one by one, and not let them all out, and she agreed. At that point in time, that was the only really decision we had.
So I just want to make sure I understand. I'm not trying to provoke here. I'm just trying to understand. We basically took the homeowner's word that she was going to fix the small hole in the fence where the dogs first escaped versus actually inspecting to make sure that was the case and that a repeat offense would not occur.
At that point in time, once the dogs were secured and she took them, I basically left Bay Village or North Olmsted to go back to Bay Village. So other officers involved, I agree that there can be other solutions, but at that time, that was what we dealt with.
If this occurred in Bay Village, would you have left the situation so quickly?
Excuse me?
Sir, we have an order of business here, and you have to be recognized for having the floor, and that has not occurred. So I'll ask that you hold your comments to yourself. I believe it was the gentleman named Matt. Thank you.
Okay. Well, in that reference, I would do that for any situation because it is a safety issue.
All right, I think, Mr. Adkins, I think on that topic, or at least the process, we're going to agree to disagree.
Okay.
But I'm going to move on to kind of the next set of questions I have, which led up to this determination hearing that happened yesterday. So, and these questions, I believe, are probably going to want to be answered by the mayor. What was the rationale in appointing Finance Director Kopfer to oversee this particular hearing? What were her prior qualifications? And does that make her acting safety director?
Mr. Chairman, she's an elected official here in North Olmsted, obviously lives in North Olmsted, and she's very qualified to have a hearing like this. And I couldn't do it because if it's appealed, I'll do the hearing. And she did a fine job.
All right. I'm not arguing whether or not she did a fine job or not. I'm just trying to understand why our finance director, who sure is qualified to run a meeting, I'm qualified to run a meeting, Council President Jones is qualified to run a meeting, but why was our finance director chosen for this particular item? Any idea?
Yeah, well, Councilman, because I could not hear the meeting. Again, if it's appealed, it'll go to me.
Yeah.
Right, you said that. Okay. So it's safe to assume that she is not the acting safety director, correct?
Pardon me?
The question was, it's safe to assume that Ms. Kopfer is not the acting safety director, just ran that particular determination hearing.
I'm the acting safety director.
Okay. So I want to move to the letter that was sent to Ms. Ramos on May 24th and signed by the mayor on public safety letterhead. Was
Broussard,
folks, can we please mute your phones? It's getting very hard to hear.
Mr. Broussard, I believe it may be Mr. Atkins who needs to mute his phone. That's all I was trying to ask you. It's too much
I'm
background
sorry.
noise.
Okay, sorry, I have dogs in the house.
Okay, that seems to be a little bit better, but I'm not sure who has the initial CO, caller number 5, but you are, there you go. Thank you. Okay, much better. All right, so the letter that was sent to Ms. Ramos dated May 24th, signed by the mayor on public safety letterhead, was this letter sent to our law department for approval prior to sending? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with the letter. I don't have it in front of me. Maybe the law department can answer that question.
Before I give the floor to Law Director Guerrero, Chuck, are you able to share that letter? Thank you. I think while we're waiting, we can invite Law Director Guerrero to answer that question. There we go.
Mr. Let me clarify. Were you referring to the May letter or the June letter that was sent? I thought you were referring to the letter of May 24th.
The May 24th letter is the one that I had the specific question on.
Oh, this is the June 7th letter. Okay. No,
Yeah.
I did not see the May 24th letter. That wasn't part of my review.
All right.
The one you were showing was, but the one from May 24th was not.
Okay, got it. So have you seen that letter since then?
Have I seen the letter of May 24th? Yes, I have.
Okay, so as it's written, would law have signed off on that at that time?
The initial observation that I had stressed was the importance of on, I believe, the 24th, before that letter presumably went out, I had indicated that there needs to be an independent hearing officer to handle that matter. So that was the key part, because the mayor obviously can't make a determination and then also hear an appeal from a determination. And I wanted just to clarify, and I know that sometimes we interchange words here, but the mayor refers to himself as the acting safety director. The mayor is not the acting safety director, okay? But it's you might be mincing words a little bit here, but it's an important distinction. For example, and I know this issue's come up before, this question about, is the mayor the acting safety director, and the mayor can only hold one title, and he can only hold the title of mayor. But it also, the charter, you should know, provides that the mayor, quote, shall supervise the administration of the city's affairs and shall exercise control over all departments and divisions. All right, so there is responsibility that the mayor has to ensure that the laws are executed, and the mayor does have control over all departments and divisions. And it's been my position that in the absence of a safety director, that some of those responsibilities can default to the mayor. That does not necessarily mean the mayor is the safety director. So I wanted to clarify that from your previous question. The question is, would I have approved the letter that went out? I can't see the entire letter. Can you scroll down on that? Yeah, I mean, the main concern I had, the main issue I would have with it is that we should have established that it would be to an independent person instead of the mayor. And that was a point that I had made, because I think it refers to the meeting with the mayor.
Got it. Okay. That's kind of the point I wanted to clarify. So I appreciate your input on that. And Chuck, I think we're good with ending that share. So circling back to the determination hearing from yesterday, it was brought to the city's attention, whether it was yesterday or even prior to yesterday's determination hearing, that Ms. Ramos indicates that only 3 of the 5 dogs are hers. She indicates that one of the dogs belongs to her sister, and then she indicated that she was dog sitting the 5th dog. So with that said, was the city made aware of that claim prior to yesterday's determination hearing? And the reason I'm asking that is because if indeed the city was aware prior to yesterday's determination hearing, then there should have been attempts made to bring in the other 2 owners of the dogs that Ms. Ramos claims are not hers. So, Mayor or your designee, please feel free to answer that.
I believe we were made aware at the hearing. I don't know of anyone that knew that before the hearing. I could be wrong if the animal control officer knew that, or Finance Director Kopfer. It would be news to me.
Okay. And so then after Finance Director Kopfer issues her ruling, then what are the next steps? What are we expecting to do from there? Or are we getting ahead of ourselves because we'll be showing our hand?
Mr. Chairman, I'll let the law director handle that question, but again, the order was to get the dogs in our custody. And when we went over there, there was Mrs. Ramos was not there, and the dogs were not there. Again, we left a letter, we sent a letter, and that's as of today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Law Director Guerrero.
Thank you. There is an appeal period that's in effect, and there's actually an opportunity for the hearing officer, safety director designee, to the designee of the safety director, in this case the mayor, to still has not issued a determination as to what to do with the animals. The only initial order that's been issued is the order with respect to to be surrendered. And as the mayor indicated, my understanding is that order was effectuated and served, and that there was nobody home and no dogs on the premises, is what I understand. Your question about the other individuals having knowledge that there are other owners of the dog would require and necessitate a due process would require that they also be entitled to receive a hearing. Whether or not you did it was one hearing or multiple hearings really is irrelevant. It's the question is that those people under the statute would be entitled to the same opportunity that Mr. Ramos had originally.
Thank you. Do we want to venture a guess as to whether or not that claim of 3 different owners is legitimate, or is this just simply perhaps an attempt to buy a little more time?
Mr. Chairman, it's probably venturing a guess, and we'll probably just not do that at this point, if you'd allow that, please.
I agree. Thank you. All right, so before I open it up to committee members, I just kind of want to reiterate what I've said a few times during this committee meeting, that I'm going to respectfully, although I recognize that Mr. Adkins has a very difficult job, made even more difficult by having to split time between 2 municipalities. But with that said, I'm going to respectfully disagree with the process that we took here. I believe that serious dog bites like these are not the quote unquote norm, and it should have necessitated the harsher of the 2 options that were available to us in the ordinance, and that would have been immediate removal or attempt at immediate removal. So.
Okay, can I make a comment?
My opinion. I'm sorry?
Can I make a comment on that?
Certainly.
Okay, I spoke to the chief of county today, the animal warden chief, and explained to her the issue we had following this incident. And I was an animal control officer in other places, and there's a lot of different procedures, but not to exclude this one. But this, I spoke to her about situations like this where no one has room to board, 4, 5, 6 vicious dogs. And she replied to me that she would agree that if the thing is, you have 2 prosecutors, you have county, you have our city. And she agreed to, the minute that happens, call them, but here's the difference. The city can cite them for all of our ordinance violations. But as far as the determination and the dogs, that would be their case. So they would come and pick up all the dogs and have them quarantined in their kennel down at county, and they would take the case over from there. And that was the last thing we said, and that's kind of more like what other agencies are doing on the West Coast and not here. At least I got that going because it bothered me too. Unless somebody wants to build a huge kennel that can, board 20 dogs. But at least I contacted her, and that was her some sort of resolution if this happens again, because I don't want it to, obviously. But I just wanted to put that on the record,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. But you just kind of prompted another question in my mind. Couldn't we have split these dogs up at multiple kennels? You know, instead of all 5 at one, couldn't we have done a 2+2+1 situation?
Like I said, we couldn't facilitate them, and this has never happened before as far as this many dogs. And so I'll be in contact with Jim Wang, the animal control officer from Westlake, and see what we can do with Bay. I have 2 kennels or a kennel in Bay that has two dogs they can hold, and we have 3 in North Olmsted. But that never came up from the different cities swapping kennels. So that's a new one.
I'm actually a little surprised to hear that, since, you know, shared services is not a new concept to this city, nor should it be to our neighboring cities. But that's another discussion for another day. My last question before I turn it over to committee members who have been patiently waiting, I suspect, is how do we ensure, other than the owner or owner's words, that these dogs are no longer in our city and a threat to our residents? How do we ensure that?
To me, well, we're going to have to do multiple checks on her residence to make sure that they don't come back. Or, you know, that's where I'm at right now. Or another letter saying that don't ever bring them back in the city. I mean, that's all I can say.
Letters have proved fruitless. So, you know, I think actions are going to speak louder, and more importantly, reassure our residents that they're actually safe to walk outside and mow their lawn and do their gardening or walk their dogs. I think letters,
I agree.
the time for letters has come and gone. I think that at this point, actions are what we really need. So, all right. Any questions or comments from committee? Mr. Limpert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. My question is to the law director, to the mayor, in regards to the use of a magistrate for this, given our unique circumstance where we don't have a safety service director present. Was that even an option, or do we not have that provision in our current policies and ordinances?
Mr. Chairman.
I'll answer that question. I did ask Assistant Law Director O'Malley who he felt was best, and I felt that it was best to have a North Olmsted resident, a full-time elected official, do it, and he agreed.
Mr. Broussard, but is a magistrate an option? I don't know if the mayor or law director know that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Limpert's question, there's a designee as to who could undertake that. They wouldn't be undertaking it in their official capacity. Somebody's microphone's open again for some reason. They wouldn't be undertaking it as a magistrate, as in one of our mayor's court magistrates. No, because their role is to satisfy those charges that are criminal, which could actually come to them pursuant to the charges that are filed against the individual. So it's probably not the best way to do that if you're using one of your own magistrates to do that, because ultimately those cases might come back to the actual department. Sorry, the power kind of flickered here. I apologize. Kind of caught me off guard. But so using the city mayor's court magistrates, if that's what you're referring to, I'm not sure would be the best idea in light of the fact that there are the possibility that those cases would come to those magistrates, if that's what you're referring to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Limpert. Ms. Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Angelo, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
I'm actually called in on, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I called in because my audio kept getting wonky. Director Grow, is it not true that we could have used outside magistrates for this hearing?
The position is hearing officer is the safety director designee. Who that designee is not specifically stated in the chart in the ordinance. So safety director, somebody's microphone's still open again. Is not the. I don't think that's you, Angela.
Sorry.
No, it's Officer Adkins.
Okay, sorry. I moved in my bed.
We can mute that, please. So no, it's not. It's not really contemplated that we would use an outside. And for instance, we have other occasions in the city where we use designees, and traditionally those designees are other directors or other division heads that are available that can assist. We don't normally go outside the city to do that.
Okay. Well, I know that the question had come up about having a magistrate cover, and while we don't typically do that, as you said, within our own confines, that I suggested that maybe we go outside, but okay, you answered that question. Thank you. Now I do have a follow-up. Have there been any other incidences besides these two with even just one of the dogs that belong to this homeowner or resident? Can anyone answer that?
I'm not aware, but that would be a good question for Officer Atkins.
And then
I'm not aware of that.
Do we know how long all 5 of these dogs have been on this property? Has it been an extended period of time, or is this like a new resident, or do we know any of that?
She stated that she's been there for in North Olmsted for 25 years, and that's all we have on that.
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Councilwoman Williamson, I can. It's a little cloudy. She said she was a 25-year resident. She said she lives with her sister in the house. She said she's moving out. Yeah, so it's a little bit cloudy. The picture's a little cloudy.
Mayor, are there plans to find out?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
As I said, we will be doing drive-bys, and any if she's found to be there or the dogs were found to be there, we will take care of it. I've expressed when I spoke to residents, if you see anything, just call, and we'll be out there. We'll be doing routine checks though.
Okay. My last question is, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Of course. Yep.
Is it my understanding, did I misinterpret or mishear something? No one went out to check to see if the escape area had been covered, or we just took the word of the resident?
What do you mean by escaped area?
Well, it was my understanding that the dogs escaped from a hole under the fence.
Right.
Did anyone go to check to see if that in fact was fixed? I mean, given that there were 5 of them.
Right. Once you remove them, and we arrived and found no evidence of dogs being there, it kind of eliminated that. She refused the inspection dates for us to come out there, and through the whole process of her dogs being registered with the city. It's been a time. She left on vacation. She came back, blah, blah, blah. And it's been a catch and go thing with the whole report here. I know I've been over there multiple times. Other officers have been over there multiple times, but there's no dogs there now. And there's something blocking the hole is all that I heard. But we were waiting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I know, so the answer is no. Is that correct?
No, once the dogs are gone, no.
Okay. So I know that through property inspections that oftentimes in situations where things are a nuisance, sometimes the adjacent property owners will allow you access to their yards to view the yard next to them. in question. Was that ever even thought of or discussed or considered?
Like I said, I don't have that information because I wasn't the reporting officer on that date.
Can anyone answer that then? Because it's very concerning to me that none of this was even considered or addressed at the time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
Councilwoman, I believe Officer Atkins said that the hole was covered, but still, if the dogs can make a hole, they can make another one. And again, that's why they were quarantined, and if they weren't allowed outside running loose, even in the yard.
Right, I understand that, Mayor, but he did say that he did not check it. He took the homeowner's word for it.
I think he said.
That's where I'm.
I think
no, he said he didn't check it. He took her word for it.
I didn't take her word for it. I just stated that they had to be quarantined and weren't allowed off the premises. And that was the end of that.
But you did not check to make sure that the hole was covered?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. That's where I was getting to.
Right.
And that's for the record, that's very concerning to me with 5 dogs at large like that wouldn't even be checked, verified, or even, assessing the yard to make sure that, yes, I know dogs escape, but to even make sure that the issue at hand was at least somewhat corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. All right, so I've seen a flurry of hands shoot up now. So to the best of my ability, I saw Mr. Kelly, then Mr. Glassburn, then Ms. Hewitt in that order. Feel free to switch it up from that order, but that's how I saw it. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question to the law director, if I may. If the mayor can't be the safety director and he can't be the service director, then how can he appoint the designee of a safety director to handle this hearing? And if the letter is signed by Kerry Copper, authorized designee of the safety director, if he can't be the safety director, was this hearing even just a moot point?
No, the hearing was not a moot point. The answer to your question is what I mentioned earlier. Under Article 3, Section 5 of the Charter, that provides that the mayor shall be the chief executive officer of the city. The mayor shall supervise the administration of the city's affairs and shall exercise control over all departments and divisions. So in the absence of that safety director, the authority of the mayor to exercise control of the division would allow there to be an appointment made for a independent hearing officer to ensure due process.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please continue. Thank you.
And then, so possibly the letter shouldn't have been the authorized designee of the safety director. It should have possibly said something else. I'm just concerned that this letter would be just found to be no good.
I think, Mr. Chairman, are you referring to the letter of the 24th?
I'm referring to June 7th, 2021.
I answered that question. That letter is valid.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'll go with Mr. Glassburn was next, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have, with this occurring in my ward, I have a number of residents that have reached out to me. There are 2 in particular that I think have relevant information to share. One is Matt Paulette, who is an immediate neighbor of the household in question. And then another gentleman, Bernie Vito, contacted me earlier as well. If it's okay with you, I'd like to give Mr. Paulette an opportunity to say his piece.
If you feel like it's relevant, we'll allow him to speak, but at any point we may have to cut that short. So Is he on? I'm not seeing him on the grid here. Is he on?
He's on by audio.
Okay, got it. All right, well, let's give it a shot.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
would not council have priority over guests? And that, not that I'm objecting to him speaking, but that I think that council has more relevancy than guests.
You bring up a good point. Our committee meeting etiquette, if you will, should supersede. So, Mr. Glassburn, if it's okay with you, we'll circle back to your resident guests after all of council has had the opportunity to speak. Will that work?
I guess so, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Ms. Heeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Glassburn. And Mr. Paulette, I'll be short because I understand that you have a very big statement, I'm sure, being a direct neighbor. I have two questions, if I may, Mr. Chair, starting with the mayor. So we do have precedent in our city for successful, sort of successful outcomes of this incident with regard to, removal of the dogs and actually termination of the dogs. And that was done by our safety director, Don Glauner, in my Ward 4. A dog was successfully removed and put down. It was an unfortunate incident. It had to be put down, but it was a very vicious dog and bit on more than one occasion. And I was aware of the county and their programs of, assisting cities. So my question to you, Mayor, is why would you not invoke the knowledge of the law department and the precedent that we would have had on file for you to sort of, help our Officer Adkins understand that process?
Councilwoman, I am aware of that incident because I heard that, and I'm the one that ordered the dog put down. As a matter of fact, these incidents happen more often than you think, and oftentimes council doesn't know about them, or sometimes a ward council person knows about them, but they happen quite often, and normally it's taken care of and taken care of properly. And this one's followed that same path as you.
Mayor, I'm not trying to be arguing. My question is, why did you not invoke the law department to find out, what in fact path was perhaps the best one after the information you received from Officer Adkins, after his suggestion or opinion?
Well, I think the law department's been involved in this case from the get-go.
It's not my question, Mayor. Please, you said you did not. You wrote a letter. You didn't consult with the law department. I'm just asking why not.
I don't know that we didn't, unless the law department says we didn't. But normally, any letter, normally any letter that goes out, and I'll get confirmation.
Yeah, we don't need it. The law director said he did not approve that letter that went out. You claim no knowledge of the letter, although it had your signature. So I do understand you did not consult. All right, that's fine. I'll move on to my next question. Thank you. So this is directed to the law director. So, Ohio has a 2-bite rule that, 1 bite is, I don't want to call it free, but it's almost like, you can't really terminate a dog or have it put down for 1 dog bite. It has to have a second or multiple after that. Is that correct, law director?
I actually don't know if that's correct for the state code, but it's not correct for the North Olmsted code.
Does Officer Adkins know the answer to that question? Officer Adkins?
I
was just curious because the question I'm actually ultimately getting to, law director, is since the dog bit residents first and then several days later bit an officer, does that now not qualify as the 2-bite, sort of state rule?
We
can we look into that?
Our code, Mr. Chairman, if I may, our code makes no such distinction. If the animal is deemed to be, and that may be why our code is preferable to a state code. And I did talk to the animal warden, the county animal warden as well, the other day, And I think they have put, she has indicated that they have put down dogs before. I don't think that it's common, but we don't have that distinction in our code. If the hearing officer determines based upon the evidence that there is a validity and merit to ordering the dogs to be euthanized, then that is within her discretion. And if that is appealed and upheld by the mayor, then that is what will be done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move back to Councilman Glassburn's two residents who wanted to speak. And I think after that, we're probably gonna wrap up this particular meeting. So go ahead.
Mr. Paulette, please feel free to go first.
Hi, how are you? My name is Matt Paulette. I live at 2326 Clifford Drive. My driveway is directly behind the residence fence where the dogs escaped. And I'm a very, very concerned citizen, being that this escape occurred either right before my daughter arrived home from school or right after my daughter arrived home from school. And knowing my daughter, that if 5 dogs, these dogs, were to attack her, she would probably not have survived this attack. That being said, we need to start a little bit further back. One of the dogs in question, the mother, Mia, bit me last June and my dog, and it was reported to the county, and the neighbor who we were technically friends with, or at least civil with for a number of years, being neighborly, refused to give me any information as far as rabies shots. I had to call the county animal warden because I don't find much help in our city in situations like this. And the county had to get involved and get me the information necessary. At that time, the county told me that that dog should not be at that residence any longer because it does not technically belong to Miss Ramos. It belongs to her boyfriend, who breeds them. He lives somewhere in Lakewood, I was told. Everybody can hear me. All right, correct?
Yeah, go on, please.
Okay. So that being said, not only did these dogs attack 3 people within a few minutes, my son happened to come home at 2:30 and took a picture of how they busted through the fence, a privacy fence, and made it look like toothpicks at 2:45 p.m. I have a timestamp photo. Your letter says this attack occurred at 3:20. The 911 call was made prior to that. So the mayor's letter on the 24th was wrong, and this is getting absolutely ridiculous. One dog bite can make a dog vicious. These dogs attacked in a pack of 5, 3 separate individuals in a matter of minutes, and would have continued on if somebody hadn't interjected and got control of these animals. What gives any animal or police or anybody the right to say you can keep your vicious animals? They just attacked 3 people, not 1, and not even check the fence and then walk away from this? I'm scared to death. I don't know what to do anymore. The dogs have been back to the residence since. I haven't seen them lately, but they have been back to the residence.
I share your concern. I share your outrage. I don't want to sound cold, but we did cover that earlier in the meeting. So I appreciate that you share the same concerns we do. My question regarding your statement is the Mia, the dog that bit you last June, was she one of the 5?
Yes.
In question?
Yes. There were 4
right.
puppies and the mother who escaped. Mr. Glassburn has a picture that I'm more than happy for him to share with the rest of you, even now, if you want, from right after this escape happened. This is a privacy fence, and they went right through it.
I think what we'll do, Mr. Paulette, is we'll ask you to share that after the meeting, and we'll just added to the collection of documents and whatever else we have on this case. So.
All right, I'll move on because there was a couple of questions asked by committee members that I may be able to shed some light on. The home is owned by Amanda Ramos and Jessica Ramos's mother, Maritza Martinez. She does not live there. She lives somewhere in Beechwood. She's a personal trainer. The dogs in question, Mia, as I said, I don't believe actually belongs to Amanda. That belongs to her boyfriend. The gentleman that breeds the dogs, he has a number of other dogs, including a very large male stud that has been on the property. These dogs will, for 4 months since the puppies have been around, you can't walk past my fence even to take my garbage out without sounding like the fence is going to come down. There was, so I believe there are at least 2 owners, right? The one that said, where she says it belongs to my sister, I don't know. Her sister owns 2 very small, very quiet dogs they've had for a number of years that have never ever presented a problem. Her sister and her sister's boyfriend or husband are responsible. But unfortunately,
I think at this point, no disrespect.
I'm done. So
yeah, okay. I think we're just speculating now. So, I want to give Mr. Vito a short opportunity to speak as well before we wrap up this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was bitten by the neighbor's pit bull about a year and a half ago. And about 10 days later, after the occurrence, it got out the back door and came at me a second time. So I know what's been going on. It's not too nice, but it seems like a lot of these owners are just skirting the laws. They're not really abiding by the letter of the law and kind of getting away from it. There hasn't been follow-ups as far as fencing requirements, containment, postage of signs. I think follow-up on occasions like this might be a big help, and possibly sending a letter out to all the residents stating the dog laws as they're stated in the charters and kind of reminders as far as registration and insurance on these animals. So a lot of people say, well, I didn't know about it, and kind of getting away from it, but it might be a good idea to send something to them just to remind them about what's been going on. And I've been seeing more and more pit bulls walking by. I've seen anywhere from 5 to 6 of them, which I've never used to see. So they're becoming more and more popular. So possibly a letter just to renew everyone's thoughts on what the requirements are to own an animal might be helpful for the future. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I do want to be clear that Mr. Vito is talking about a separate incident on Maple Ridge Road that occurred last year. But the relevance that I wanted to share with the committee is the concept of what are we doing in these cases as a regular procedure. I do think it's relevant. This case in particular has gotten a lot of attention, but not every case does. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. And without opening up a whole nother long conversation, the incident from a year and a half ago with Mr. Vito, is this a separate resident and a separate set of dogs versus the ones we're talking about today?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I see one more hand raised by, make it 2. We'll go with Ms. Williamson and then Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question regarding the county health department. I don't know if anyone can answer this, but if a report was made to them from one of our residents, would the health department notify our city? And if so, who would have been notified, and would any action have been taken at that time?
As far as I'm concerned, the health department does not notify us. So that's all I know as far as being the ACO there.
All right, but Ms. Williamson, if it's okay, I'm going to ask the mayor and his administration to maybe look into the feasibility of better communication between the county and the cities regarding matters such as that. Go ahead.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, that could be something that they place into the contract when we renew it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Kelly, did you still have a question?
Actually, I had a comment. I'd like to give kudos to you, Mr. Broussard, for breaking up another dog attack on Dover Center Road after this occurrence, and probably saved a resident, even though she may not have been from North Olmsted, a lot of possible personal injury and injury to her dog. And I have to say, it takes guts to go and try to scare away 2 German Shepherds. So I appreciate your efforts on that.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I appreciate the attaboy, but I'd like to think that just about everybody else, if put in the same set of circumstances, would have probably reacted similarly. But thank you. I'm just glad it had a happy ending. Council President Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would echo Councilman Kelly's thoughts about that and how you reacted in that situation. But regarding that situation, Mayor, what was the result of that particular call that Councilman Broussard made into our police department? Did they find those German Shepherds? And if so, what is the follow-up on that particular incident, please?
Madam President, I'll let Chief Wagner answer that question.
So what the information that we turned over to the reporting officer yesterday was we believe we were able to locate the owner of the German Shepherds. We believe she lives on Dover Center, and we were able to locate the woman whose dog was attacked by these 2 dogs that Councilman Broussard broke up. So all that information was given to the reporting officer. He was supposed to follow up yesterday, so we are doing a report. That report will be sent to the city prosecutor, and I can't speak on what the officer found out yet. I don't know if he made contact with the victim and or the owner of the dogs as of yet. He was just given that information yesterday, just before noontime.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to say, just for my own personal experience, you and your officers have handled that particular incident very professionally and expediently. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilman Glassburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will only ask 2 questions. I appreciate the indulgence earlier. The 2 questions I have are, first off, the owner of the dogs on Clegg, whether she lives there or not, in the television coverage threatened a TV reporter with putting these vicious dogs in her backyard. At what point, I don't mean to be rhetorical here, at what point can we actually arrest the owner if she is in the city of North Olmsted? I don't know if that's a law question or if it's too speculative, but.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, the usual course of that would be if a complaint is made to the Division of Police, and if the complaint is made, there'll be, as the chief can tell you, there'll be an officer assigned to take a report, and then from there it'll be forwarded to the prosecutor for a determination of any charges. Not everybody goes out and gets arrested. Oftentimes the charge doesn't require them to be picked up immediately. They can appear in court. I can tell you that with respect to this case and the dogs as it stands right now, there are not a lot of first-degree misdemeanors which subject an individual to arrest at this point. Those first-degree misdemeanors can be upcoming based upon how she proceeds to deal with the orders that have been issued. In other words, neglecting them, failing to follow them, ignoring them, results in a first-degree misdemeanor, which is 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine potential. If you're talking about the threat that she made to the reporter, I mean, we haven't received anything. I don't know, Chief, if you can speak to whether or not anybody made a complaint on that. I haven't heard anything. I saw the same thing. Whether or not it rises to a criminal act, is up in the air. But maybe that the Chief knows if anybody spoke to that issue over with you guys.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Of course, Chief.
I was informed today that the reporter contacted the detective sergeant and mentioned that the information was given to their supervisor. I don't at this point believe, and if it did, I'm not aware that an official complaint was made.
Thank you. Mr. Broussard, the second question I had is, I don't think I'm speaking too out of turn to say that folks in my area and in Ward 2 and in the Clay Road area in general are not going to be comfortable walking around this area until these dogs are in someone's possession that is law enforcement or a government agency. If these dogs are seen, we've talked a little bit of, if they're seen in North Olmsted, we're supposed to call the police, but if they're seen in Cleveland, if they're seen anywhere, these dogs are a threat. What, if anything, can be done if they're seen in another community, or if this woman just stays out of North Olmsted for forever, are we forever unable to take action? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm not sure if the law director wants to handle that.
Look, well, we're not done yet with this case. So, I mean, in other words, as the assigned hearing officer designee hasn't issued, the order was issued to surrender the dogs. That has been ignored. I think we can't overstate the belligerence of the dog owner throughout the course of yesterday, and as evidenced on television, storming out the door, running into a reporter and then threatening to drop the dogs off in her backyard. We don't have a cooperative individual. She, by all, and that's not always the case. We have remorseful dog owners when their dog bites somebody. This is probably, I don't know, maybe the Chief could tell you, one of the more outrageous responses to somebody's own negligence that I could possibly envision. So if as of now, we understand the dogs are not at this location. We now have the identity of someone who's next door, and I would hope that if those dogs should show up at any point, that immediately we have eyes and ears next door to that house that could immediately notify if those dogs show up, because there is an order to surrender, and we will take the dogs. We haven't done anything bad by way of disposition of the dogs, because that's coming up, and the hearing officer has to make that determination. But we do intend to pursue, if we have to proceed with injunctive relief. If the order is issued and the order is not followed, then we intend to pursue it to other cities within the county to enjoin the continued possession of those dogs, if that's what the hearing officer orders. That would be an option that might be available, and if it is, we're going to pursue it. That certainly is one I would like to see us pursue. It's kind of novel, but I would certainly like to see us pursue that approach. I don't know that any other city is gonna really follow an order to destroy the animal, if that's what the case is, coming out of North Olmsted, but we certainly intend to enforce our own order, if that's what the order is.
Okay. Thank you, Law Director. I think at this point we've hashed and rehashed what I was looking to accomplish this evening. Ms. Heeman, I'll please, if it's more information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So very quickly, Law Director Gross, since the dogs are not in North Olmsted, they've not been surrendered, obviously pursuant to the order, which was recently issued. What about another community? So for example, do we hold any liability, that if these dogs are in Lakewood or Cleveland and attacks someone there, or we don't, because, we ordered the surrender and she didn't comply?
Yeah, Two points on liability. There's no liability to the city, but I can tell you in the state of Ohio, the liability to the dog owner or the person in possession of the dog is extraordinary. So between the administrative order, the criminal charges, and what is bound to be a flood of civil lawsuits, there's plenty of consequences to come to the dog owner here, notwithstanding her attitude toward the situation. No liability on our part, though.
All right. Thank you. I think at this point, we're going to wrap up this evening's Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee meeting at 8:16 p.m. And I want to thank you for everybody who was patient and insightful as well. Thanks to all.